Hey YouTube, Ron Bessie here. This is a follow-up video from my first one on this trike. This is a Kohler 4-cycle engine. It's the 27 horse is what it initially started out with. If you watch the other video, you see a lot of the other modifications I've done. Update on this is I've changed the exhaust system. This is a stock side mount Kohler oil filter side exhaust on it now, or muffler system. If you look, it attaches each side there, wraps around, it actually clears the reduction drive. Try to get a better shot in here. Come around, it's a lot quieter, very solid mount. You can actually put the whole trike by and it don't even wobble. Changed some other things. Got a 15 tooth idler sprocket on here now just to take up some of the slack. While the YouTube trolls were ripping me a new one on different things on this, it doesn't matter. I've talked to the chain manufacturers and they said it didn't matter that it had the slop in it. It doesn't hurt the chain at all, but this makes it a little bit nicer, neater looking. Adds more work and more weight to the reduction drive, but it doesn't do anything as far as performance. You know, the belt, you obviously got to take the slack out of it, but this has still got a little bit of slack on it. Now once it's rotating with the propeller, this is going to pull tight, and then you'll end up with your slack on this side. Probably got a good 20 hours on this chain, and you know, there's absolutely no wear at all. You can see all it's done is wear a little bit of the oxide finish off the idler, and that's it. Another thing I changed was the intake that I previously had was kind of an L-shaped one. Actually, it was this one over here. I'll show you. Took that off, looked like a plumber's nightmare there, so I made up. So I changed it out to be a little bit nicer, neater package. Just a block of 6061 T6 aluminum machined out, and on the carburetor directly under that. So it kind of brings it a little bit tighter, looks a little neater, makes a nice, neater package to fit under, you know, some type of cowling or something if it was on a tractor configuration. It's really the only 2 or 3 changes I made was exhaust, the idler, and then that intake. Give you a little bit overview for those that's the first time seeing this one as opposed to the other one. Around here, I've had like lots and lots of people asking why I went with chain as opposed to belt, and what was the limit a chain can do, and on and on and on. I think even one of the comments I put a YouTube link to all drag racing motorcycles to show that they're using a lot smaller chain than I got on this, and they're doing 200+ mile an hour and a quarter mile with them. And just to give you an example, here's the chain. This is just another chain that I had made on a different reduction drive ratio, so I kind of left over. But just to give you an idea of the size, this is 5/8 or 50 pitch compared to my fingers size-wise, and that's one of the previous sprockets I'd had. Let's do an example. This is my youngest kid's bicycle, and I can ride it, as embarrassing as it looks to see me on this thing. I can ride that, but to give you an example in chain size, and you guys asked for it, so now you're going to get it. We're going to do some math. Okay, just to give you an example. I don't know if you can see this or not, but I'll kind of go over it verbally. Let's see, we have obviously your torque calculations here is radius times, you know, pounds, if we're going to go to foot-pounds of torque. And the Rotax 447, which is what I was trying to do here with this 4-cycle engine, was to mimic the 447 because they no longer make it, and to get away from a 2-cycle and try to, you know, the options of 4-cycle and the benefits of it. Its peak torque is 44.7 foot-pounds of torque. This one here that I've got from Kohler in their manual, and that's also from the Rotax one there. It's 42.3 foot-pounds of torque. And then this one's for the 2 carburetor configuration. So it's their maximum they can get out of that particular configuration without, you know, other personal modifications people might do to them. Okay, so to give you this example, these are real close in comparison here as their maximum torque. Okay, now, a person that weighs 180 pounds riding a bicycle and the crank on your pedal is about 6 inches, so that's a half a foot. That times that, you end up with 90 foot-pounds of torque. So when you're comparing chain to chain, I really don't even need a chain that big on there. Actually, half that size is all I need to run this. Now obviously that's way overkill for what I'm trying to do here. But I don't want the problems of derailing or some kind of issues like that with alignment. This is a lot more forgiving because of the surface area of each roller to be forgiving for, you know, slight misalignments or vibrations or something. Plus I never have to worry about this ever wearing out. Take a lifetime to probably wear that chain out. So just doing the math, and there's no magic, everything's math. Another thing is, like when you're looking at, you know, I'd mentioned in the previous video the 5252, that's getting into where the calculation for where horsepower was divided by 2 pi radians. When you're getting into the horsepower, if you look, if RPM ever reached 5252, these two would cancel, you end up with torque equals horsepower. So whatever your torque is, your horsepower would be at 5252 RPM. Like I said, I do all the math and everything's real simple, straightforward to me. A lot of people who had superstitions and folklores about the chains and stuff like that, and you know, talking to people that manufacture chains, they got a kick out of it. But you know, your chain's never going to wear out. Same as, you know, we've been riding on motorcycles for 100 years, and you know, the motorcycle people hate belts, and the airplane people hate chains, and it's all superstition in both directions. When you actually do the math on it, and there's nothing wrong with belts. Belts work great. They just, you know, I just don't care for the belts for lots of ergonomic reasons. If you're not using a timing belt, then you got the potential of slippage. In a pusher configuration, if you get any oil leaks, it could spray onto the belt, which could cause slippage. May or may not be any kind of an issue at all. You know, I've had belts on things that work great. So, you know, I got nothing against the belt, but the reason I went with chain was just because it was very simple to design. I didn't have to worry about alignment issues like I did with when I was trying to develop a belt system. I had one of the belts get ate up on me and it was perfectly aligned. So it just, I maybe had a bad belt and it just came apart, but it was not something I wanted to experience in flight. I got the propeller off this just so you guys can get a better look at it. I'll put the propeller back on, fire it up, and if there's no neighbors around, I might shoot around the neighborhood in it. Obviously it's a wing off, but just give you kind of a follow-up because I had enough requests asking for one, and just to show some of the more modifications to it. I figure I'm pretty much done with whatever I wanted to accomplish with this, so I'll probably end up selling this particular trike because I got another project I want to start on. I don't know, anybody that knows me knows I just enjoy designing and building, and once I'm done with them I usually sell them and start another project. It's kind of like one of these things where I just enjoy kind of the challenge of it more than, you know, the piloting part of it. You know, more of a designer builder than pilot. Actually kind of stink as a pilot, so better at designing and building. So anyway, just give you a follow-up and then I'll fire it up from there, and you know, I may not say much after that. So talk to you later. Bye. Hey YouTube. Okay, I'm back. Sorry I didn't get this fired up yet. I get the propeller on, but I thought of a couple other things that I need to go over real quick, just from the questions I've had. People was asking about vibration from the chain. It doesn't matter if you got chain belt, geared, doesn't matter. If you're getting vibration, 99% of the time, and this is my experience with lots of different propellers is your vibrations come from your propeller, not from your engine. Because if you can take the propeller off the engine and run it and you get no vibration or just minimal like you would a riding lawnmower or anything else, that's what you should be getting, because the internal parts on the engine's already balanced, so there's nothing else there that can vibrate. And, you know, even with a single piston, that riding lawnmower is a single piston, and that they don't shake or vibrate or nothing, just this normal, you know, pulses that you feel, but it's nothing uncomfortable. The vibrations almost always comes from the propeller. I've bought everything from, you know, these ultra props all the way up to what's the power fins, and I've had I'm trying to think of the other one that I had that was, you know, like $1,000 propeller. Every one of them out of the box was out of balance, and I had to balance them. Once you balance them, they're smooth as glass, because it's just another flywheel. So if you balance it, it's just going to stabilize it even more. Another thing is, people's asked me about like direct drive right out of the engine. Two things. One is, when you run direct drive out of any engine, you have to have a thrust bearing in there. That means that all the load being pulled or pushed on the crankshaft is being absorbed by some type of a bearing that is not just your radial bearings for your connecting rods and such. It's actually a thrust bearing that's at the end or the beginning of the case of the engine to compensate for that, you know, amount of pulling or pushing that's going on. When you're running through any kind of reduction, you don't have to worry about that, because it's all radial forces and you don't have a forward or backward pull or push on it. The other thing that happens is, let's do the math again. You know, like this is a 2.5 to 1 reduction, so you're taking the 40 pounds of torque roughly at 5,000 RPMs, and you're getting 100 foot-pounds of torque at the propeller. Okay, now the larger the propeller, then that counteracts that, because imagine putting your hand on a small propeller and rotating it versus one that's way out there. It's a lot easier to rotate one that's further out based off the torque formula. So you're counteracting that with more power to the propeller, because you're compressing that whole radial area of the propeller is being compressing all that air. Smaller propeller or single blade or 2-blade propeller versus a 4-blade or 3-blade, you can see that it's a lot more area being compressed. So obviously the bigger the gear ratio, the more power you're getting right to that propeller. 2.0 to 1, you're only getting 80 pounds of torque at the propeller, but you're gaining speed. Your compromise is that you're able to run the engine a little bit slower. You can't obviously run the propeller tips faster than the speed of sound, or you end up with one, a horrible noise, and the other one is you end up with horrible inefficiencies. And obviously if it's a direct drive, you're only right at the 40 pounds of torque, which is not much at all. But there again, you get a lot of speed, and you know, if you have an engine that has a thrust bearing, it'll take care of that. So anyway, just some more things to go over real quick before I shut this off and fire this thing up. Okay, bye.
Let it warm up a little bit.
Okay, let's check some temperatures real quick. Before the neighbors freak out. Okay, let's see what we got. Okay, exhaust temp. Around three, almost 400. Cylinder head, 170 something is the highest. Chain, 100 degrees. Outside temperature, 85. What else do we want? Oil filter. Oil filter, about 180. Yeah, let's see. Intake, about 160, so that's good for not needing any carb heat. The cylinder, about 170 something. Flywheel, 69 degrees. What else do we want? Little valve cover is 157. And same as outside temperature. Oil sender, oil pressure sender, 113. Exhaust here is, I think it gets up around 6 something, right at 700 degrees out of the exhaust when it's running. That little idler's at like 120. So, you know, you literally can touch these things right after it runs. I wouldn't grab the exhaust, obviously, but not too bad. So it could use a little bit more warm-up time to you know, get a little more throttle response, because obviously a 4-cycle, if it ain't warmed up, it's gonna get kind of a bottom end chop to it. Okay, that's it. Talk to you later. Bye.